There's another report related to Israel that upset me, and that one is according to Bloomberg or the Washington Post. The U.S. just burnt through half of its entire THAAD interceptor stockpiles defending Israel, while Israel conserved most of its own. The U.S. fired over 200 THAAD interceptors and more than 100 ship-based missiles from the Eastern Mediterranean during Operation Epic Fury. Israel fired fewer than 100 Arrow interceptors and around 90 David Slings interceptors, some of those against Houthi and Hezbollah projectiles, not Iran's ballistic missiles. One analyst put it plainly, the U.S. absorbed most of the missile defense mission while Israel conserved its magazines. The U.S. is now left with roughly 200 THAAD interceptors and a production line that can't keep pace with demand. Japan and South Korea, who depend on U.S. THAAD for deterrence against North Korea and China, are alarmed. And then it goes to Netanyahu has persistently pressured Trump to restart the war. And it talks about how Iran still has most of their missiles. That's heartbreaking to see if it's true. That's sad.
I think it's less heartbreaking than it tells me a lot about the dynamic of the Trump-Hegseth relationship with Israel. All right? I mean, this war did not just happen on a dime. By their own admission, by the admission of Netanyahu, by the admission of General Kane and Pete Hegseth, they prepared for this war since well after right after the 12-day war where they bombed the Iranian nuclear sites. They had started preparing for this as the next phase of the war, which I know Hegseth probably thought was going to be a land invasion of Iran. So did Netanyahu. But this was shared, and Israel, I am dead certain, went to the United States and said, hey, listen, we will handle this altitude and this altitude, but you need to bring your THAADs up to handle these Quorum Shah 4s and high altitudes. And they just let us blow through our wad. But I think Trump and Hegseth were more than willing to give that up. Absolutely more than willing to give all of that up. So I don't think Israel tricked us into anything. I think Hegseth and Trump were just nuts about jumping both feet into this. And, and don't forget, I mean, they got Mike Huckabee as the evangelical, ambassador to Israel, who swears to protect Israel above and beyond anyone. These people have no loyalty to the Constitution of the United States. It's to their constituency. And don't forget, I mean, evangelicals need Israel to survive so it can be destroyed at the end of times and Jesus returns. That's what the book of Revelation says. And that's their entire cynical view of why Israel should do it. And they also love Israel because they love that Israel kills Arabs, right? They kill terrorists and they're madly in love with them over that. That happened after since 9/11. But let them burn. So I can easily see Huckabee and Trump and Hegseth all going, we will defend you at the highest altitude, exospace interceptors. We'll use that. And, Mario, this stuff is like toys to kids, right? It's like Halloween. And you leave giant baskets of, mini Snickers and Three Musketeers everywhere. They're going to steal and eat everything they can. And Hegseth and Trump are like, yes, we did it. And then they look back and the hard reality, General Kane's like, we have no interceptors if a real war breaks out anywhere else in the world. Ask yourself this question, Mario. Where is the Golden Dome interceptors going to come from? $1.2 trillion version of the Israeli air defense system over every part of the United States. We don't have enough interceptors to defend South Korea.
That's wild.
It is. And God forbid there should be a war with China. China now can do anything they want.
Putin and Xi just met. She and Putin met over tea yesterday. And they discussed the Iran war. According to Dmitry Peskov, he said they discussed the Iran war. He said Moscow does not endorse the use of coercive pressure by Washington against foreign governments. What else did he say? He says Putin informed Xi of Russia's proposal to transfer enriched uranium out of Iran to Russian territory. And then one last point, the uranium transfer proposal is for Tehran and Washington to decide. The U.S. has not accepted it yet. And then they talk about Cuba. What do you make of that meeting, and also the facade? Like we saw that big painting or portrait of them both. I think Putin was welcomed by someone that was more senior than the person that welcomed Trump. That's what I was told. I haven't verified this. And they've signed 40. I checked it. They signed 40 agreements in that meeting. With the Trump-Xi meeting, there's not one agreement I checked on Grok.
Nope.
They announced some deals, but nothing was signed. Some soybeans and potential Boeing purchases, but nothing actually signed. Versus 40 between China and Putin and Trump. China
that
and
Boeing
Putin.
purchase was actually negotiated under Joe Biden, and it was for 500 aircraft, and the Chinese cut it down to 200, maybe. All of the trappings of the Putin-Xi meeting were designed to humiliate Trump. Look, Trump is the person who went along with dividing the world up into a tripolar world, right? The United States gets the Western Hemisphere and has influence over the Middle East oil. Russia gets Europe and the Eastern Hemisphere, and China gets Asia and, the Indian subcontinent, and, as the senior partner. That's the tri-party world
As a senior
Donald
partner.
Trump believes in. Well, yeah, because they got 2 billion people, and India has 1.25 billion, and they're nuclear powers, but they're not the economic powerhouse that China is. So by putting up the big banners, that was designed to needle Trump. Having the agreements, that was also designed to needle Trump. But Russia desperately needs China to survive, not to prevail in the war with Ukraine, but to even survive as a nation.
Do you think we're at the cusp of a multipolar world? Are we just at that stage already? We're already
We're
there?
entering it. We're entering it. The United States has abdicated its belief. Let me rephrase that. I always try to make this clear. Not the United States. Donald Trump and the MAGA party have abdicated their role in the world. As far as they're concerned, everything that happened after D-Day up until the day Donald Trump was elected for the second term is over. They don't care about it. Their attitude is the good fellas, I don't care what's happened to you, F you pay me, right? That's their attitude towards the entire world now. And until a new president comes back or a actual Congress, none of this would have been allowed if the Congress had actually lived up to its role defending the Constitution. They love the idea of the United States creating the Don Roe doctrine, right? Bringing America back to only the Western Hemisphere. That surrenders Europe to Putin. And look what they did. Everything that I had ever predicted. I wrote 4 New York Times bestsellers about Trump and his relationship with Russia and Russian intelligence, right? And how the United States was going to not step away, run away. But they couldn't do it within certain laws. You can't just leave NATO. One of the early predictions was made was that Trump would just stop sending U.S. officers to fill NATO positions. He's done that. He would start drawing down U.S. forces in Europe. He's done that. Now,
He just sent, but didn't he send troops to Poland? Yeah, what happened with Poland?
No, the 4,000 troops that were supposed to rotate and deploy to Poland, they have just canceled all of their orders.
No, I think that it just came in now while you're speaking. Polish defense minister just posted Trump's decision to send 5,000 additional soldiers to Poland confirms that Polish-American relations are very strong and Poland's a model, an ironclad ally. It's good that we fight together for that. Just came in now, and Trump posted based on the successful election of the now president of Poland, Karol Nawrocki, who I was proud to endorse in our relationship with him. I am pleased to announce that the U.S. will be sending an additional 5,000 troops to Poland.
Okay, so it's the Ready Brigade is going to rotate. 2 days ago, they were saying that this unit had already had its welcome to Poland ceremony, had already all of its armor was on ships being offloaded in Poland, and we were getting the reports by from Pete Hegseth that they were canceling that deployment. This is the schizophrenia of this White House, Mario. That 1 minute you could be telling 5,000 troops, their wives and kids, and these forces, we are forward deploying them in Poland for war with Russia, right? At the same time, telling Estonia the United States may not live up to NATO Article 5, and believing that NATO has never assisted us, even
He
though
said
they've
that.
lost. Yeah,
They said that
Trump.
to Estonia. He said that to
Oh
Estonia.
yeah. Well, the hint is that the United States may not feel that Estonia
Oh, the
or the
one from
Baltic
before.
states are a tripwire enough to have U.S. intervention. And then the announcement of this Ready Armor Brigade not being rotated, even though they were already starting to be there.